Do you know what? It's Thursday. Unbelievably. Thursday, 24th of February. I'm Russ Kane, what's left of him. This is the ABC of CBD exclusive to Men's Radio Station. I'm sorry if my signal today isn't great. Done everything that we can. Nothing more, but you will be in very capable hands in the very near future. All it remains for me to say is to introduce the Maharaja of marijuana, the hunk of hemp, the count of cannabinoids. It is Mr. Oliver Mammon.
Hey, we got all the sixes today, episode 66. I'm so excited.
This is good. No, and with a special guest who we've just been chatting to that you found, of course. I'm sorry about my signal. I apologize.
No, it's a lot better now. It's a lot better.
And very, very soon, big news coming up with the signal department. But anyway, we're not going to take up any more time.
You getting new internet?
Yeah, totally.
Hell yeah.
Brand spanking, out of the box, whizzy.
Fiber optic.
Yeah, the whole fiber optic. It should be sensationally good. And if that doesn't work, I shall throw my computer out the window into the river, which I live next to, and use 2 Ovaltine tins and a piece of string. Now then, before we do anything else, let's have a word from our fabulous sponsors, and then over to Ollie.
I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD, a product created by users for users, a product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price.
Boom.
Yeah.
Tell
I
you
just
what,
had an incredible image.
it
Russ,
never pulls. What's up?
I had this beautiful image. I've had this incredible image. So basically, Russ lives in the city. I live in North London. There is a train which theoretically goes all the way from Russ's to mine. I'm thinking if I can attach a piece of string to my front door, get on the train, go all the way to Russ's, give him the other piece of string, head back home, tie a can to mine, tie a can to his. We can literally chat to each other. And I was just thinking, the train line will do all the work for us. We don't even need to travel that far. It'll be incredible.
It's great. You know, when I was at primary school, the happiest days of my life, we do all those things. And the other things that we do is send each other Morse code. So you get a little bulb and a little battery, and you just attach the wire. Such simple pleasures, you know.
Do you actually know Morse code?
No, of course we didn't. But we had books, you know, we'd get a book out of a comic or something. It was great fun.
Like dash, dash, line, dash,
Yeah,
line means I'm going to steal your girlfriend from you, right?
Well, we were only about 6 or 7, so probably.
But I'm going to steal your toys from you then. Either way, there's got to be some malice in Morse code.
I'm going to steal your Dinky and Corgi cars. Right. Okay.
On with the show?
On with the show.
On with the show. Okay. Episode 66, live on Men's Radio every single week. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. If you're watching us on Facebook, follow the Men's Radio page. If you want to add me as a friend, add me as a friend on Facebook. You want to add Russ as a friend, I think I'm a better friend. But I mean,
he's a much better friend. I'm not much of a good friend.
I'll probably message back. But yeah, so feel free to follow us. Feel free to add us. And for everyone who's joined us over the last 66 weeks, anyone who's followed us, anyone who's learned anything from us, thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you for giving me something to do every Thursday night. Thank you for being our audience. We love you. So wherever you are out there.
All over the world. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, this week we're joined by someone who most of you probably don't know. His name is Ed Mcdonald. Now, Ed's actually quite special. I got a phone call last week from a buddy of mine, maybe 3 weeks ago, from Ed Granger, who was on this show several weeks ago. Several months ago now, and Edward said to me, I have to check out this new website. This website is called the Cannabis Pages. And I was like, why? He goes, because it gives all of us patients all of the information that we do not get from our doctors. And I explained to him, I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, when you go to a doctor, the doctor can't actually tell you what specific strains you should use for specific ailments. So yes, you can go and get a cannabis prescription in the UK, but when it comes to actually being prescribed, it's very much patient's choice. So I was like, all right. He goes, because they're specialist medications, you're not actually allowed to make any medicinal claims around them. You're not actually allowed to attach an ailment to a strain. You can't do prescriptions in that capacity. So I was a little bit
I'm
shocked.
so sorry. Whoa up a minute. I'm not following that. So you've got let's make it up. You got a bad back.
You got a bad back. You go to the doctor. He's like, yes, you've got a bad back. Yes, you are eligible for medical cannabis.
Right.
What product would you like?
And I'd go, I haven't a clue. You tell me.
And then they would turn around saying, well, we can recommend drops or we can recommend flowers you vape. What would you prefer?
Dunno, never done
exactly.
it before,
And that's one of the biggest problems with the market at the moment is that unless a patient is directing the doctor based on what they want, very often a lot of patients are not getting the correct prescriptions for their medication. Now, Edward is an epilepsy sufferer, Edward Granger, the person we had on the show. Yep. And he said that the information he found through the cannabis pages enabled him to actually quantify and analyze the medications being offered to him through his clinic, enabling him to make an accurate decision based on what helps him. And he said that since using the cannabis pages, he has definitely got more out of his medicine. Why? Because the cannabis pages shares information based on patients' interactions with specific products, enabling a dissemination of information which is not available to most patients out there. Right. Me hearing all of this, me learning all of this, and us having our topic at the moment of patients and what patients do for other patients, I thought we had to bring him on. We had to bring on Mr. Mcdonald. Yeah. We had to share everything he's doing about his site. And we had to share all the information which we can about this system and this service, because there are patients out there who are more often than not getting the wrong product. It's something Claire said as well when she was on the show. Claire was talking about how finding the right product she found extremely difficult. Yep. Spoken to many people who have had the same issues within the medical cannabis market. Why? Because doctors are just about learning how to prescribe, let alone what to prescribe. And it's so difficult. It's so difficult to kind of navigate this system, which is a little bit convoluted, and there is a lack of information and a lack of guidance. So I'm going to give my introduction like I usually do. I'm apologizing to Ed in our waiting room that he's going to be waiting for a little bit longer, but I'm going to give my introduction. But that's basically the focal point of today, is to discuss Ed, his journey, his story, and the system that he's built for all of you patients out there who are lost and who are, a little bit confused as to what medicine they should be choosing when they go to their doctor, because it's a whole new practice in this world. You go to a doctor, you expect them to have all the answers when they only have half of the answers. So the answer they can give you is that you're eligible, but the actual direction they give you is limited. That's where companies, pages, communities like the cannabis pages come in and actually help people. So introduction time. Right. Over the last few weeks, we have focused on the medical journeys of normal people who have faced extraordinary challenges. The two things these people all have in common: they did not give up, whether through sheer determination or the will to live through the help of the special loved ones. They all found their answers with cannabis. So none of them gave up, and they all found their answers with cannabis. It's truly amazing how a simple yet commonly illegal plant has changed these people's lives so drastically for the better. It all seems a little bit too good to be true. But these are a couple of the stories out of thousands of stories around the world, if not millions of stories around the world, of how cannabis has changed people's lives. This is not a rare occurrence. Every day, more and more people are finding the route to their comfort, the route to their happiness with cannabis. And every day, more and more people join the struggle and fight for others who deserve access, education, and direction regarding this incredible plant and the vast benefits it yields. This is why so many of the guests we have presented on the show over the last 66 weeks have taken it upon themselves to educate others, guide others, nurture others, and help people on their journeys to cannabis clarity. Hopefully, a cannabis-based medical solution to their problem, and a little bit of guidance in the world where we all feel lost. If you can remember, several months ago, we had Matt Hughes from MedCan Support. He provides medical support, guiding patients, guiding parents of epileptic children along their journeys. He's worked with hundreds of parents, guiding them through the minefield of child epilepsy and the therapeutic opportunities available with cannabis. Hannah Deacon, who works alongside Matt Hughes, is one of the loudest and clearest voices in our industry, screaming constantly for the rights of other patients and the support structure needed for parents of those patients. The support structure doesn't exist at a medical level, so Hannah and the rest of the MedCan team provide this help, guidance, and support to parents everywhere who might need it. Dr. Callie Seaman, who we've had on the show several times, is a constant guiding, nurturing, educating soul in this industry to anyone who asks her. And her knowledge and her journey have helped thousands of others to find their way. Callie Blackwell, who went through hell with her son nearly dying of cancer and has helped to keep him alive through cannabis therapy. She's helped thousands of other sufferers just like her son, directly or indirectly through their loved ones, guiding them through this web of cannabis misinformation, guiding them to understanding quality of product and consumption habits. Jade Proudman, who joined us last week, who actually made me and Ross cry live on the show. She's literally lived a war and she's still fighting. And the positivity, the warmth, and the guidance she's managed to bring to other people's lives is just incredible. She's helped over 9,000 people. She's guided over 9,000 people, and she's supported 9,000 lost souls. She's given all of herself to the plant. She's given all of herself to the community, and she's given all of herself to this industry because she believes this industry, this community, this plant gave her a second chance at life. The common theme here is these incredible people and the many more who are featured on this show, and those who we don't know and who work in the shadows, all have experienced and learned and now share to make others' journeys more simple. They are the foundations of a new cannabis community built on the principles of guidance, nurture, and care, because they know how difficult their journeys were without this support structure. The issues these community leaders have faced, the hurdles they've jumped through, and the system they've had to learn can now be leapfrogged and skipped over with ease because of the information they can disseminate to other patients. When you know how to do something, it's no longer considered hard or complicated. Understanding as a concept is developed in stages. And if we can share the outcomes from each stage, we as a community will have a greater understanding. Knowing about something makes the process steps more simple. This was the aim of our guest today, to share information and help build a better understanding for other patients. Ed Mcdonald is a legal medical cannabis patient. He is based in Jersey, and he took some of the challenges he faced on his journey to medical cannabis and created a platform to help guide other patients. Unlike many of our other guests, Ed doesn't actually work directly or face-to-face directly with patients, nurturing them and influencing them. He saw issues with the supply chain, he saw issues with the education, and he saw issues with information, and he's built a system to help disseminate information from one patient to another. As a new patient in a new system, the information provided to you regarding different cannabis medication is slim to non-existent. And a central location for peer-based reviews and information dissemination doesn't exist. Ed wanted to know and understand his fellow patients' experiences and how available cannabis products on the UK market interacted with these ailments, how certain conditions interacted with certain strains, and how the quality of product matched up to basic product descriptions. He has also incorporated other functions into his application, whether a product is in stock, what the appearance of a product is, what the actual user experience is. He's building a community for patients to help patients identify what is right for them. Because like I said at the start of the show, when you go to a doctor, the doctor will never tell you what's right for you. And with so many different clinics providing so many different products from so many different sources, it's sometimes hard no one gets lucky and finds it first time, but it's sometimes hard to even decide which angle you should be going down, which clinic you should be working on. Every clinic in the UK has their own supply chain. The number of clinics is on the rise. Therefore, the variety of medical cannabis products being supplied to the UK market is on the rise. Not all cannabis is made equal. Not every cannabis product will work for every ailment or for every person with that ailment. Cannabis is very specific, and cannabis products which have been created are even more specialized. The epileptic needs something different from the arthritic sufferer. The PTSD sufferer needs something different to the pain relief sufferer, and so on and so on. What Ed has built will bring some clarity to this product selection process, and it will bring clarity to the journey of so many patients out there. However, a system like this requires support, and it requires the cannabis patient community to populate this site and share their experiences of medicinal cannabis products in the UK. A community of active users providing functional data will enable patients to direct their suppliers. What happens is when you have a whole bunch of active patients turning around and saying a product doesn't work for them, the supplier will then get that information. They will then be able to go out there and find a product which might potentially work. We're still in a new industry. We're all still learning. And data is at the core of us strengthening and solidifying our foundation as a new industry in the UK. Whether a common solution is found or a persistent problem is reported, user experiences can help shape and form a solid foundation to build upon, whilst also helping to guide new patients to what might be right for them. The Cannabis Pages is not a commercially affiliated system. It's not a commercially affiliated program. It's not linked to any clinics. It's not linked to any farms. It's an independent organization. It's an independent system run by patients for patients. And I've heard some fantastic things about their approach to education from several patients. When you only get so much information from your doctor and the systems are all private, unfortunately, meaning they're commercially focused, it's important to have an independent opinion on what you have been recommended and by whom. So let's bring on the man who made this possible, the patient with a plan, the man who puts the ed in education, Mr. Ed Mcdonald.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us.
A wonderful introduction.
That was the longest introduction I've ever heard.
I know, I apologize for that, but there's a lot of information. I kind of wanted to get it out before we I
didn't want Ed to run away.
I thought he might run away. I didn't realize that.
I thought he was going to go off and make supper.
I thought it would be like 8 minutes. It was 10, so I do apologize. It went on a little bit longer.
That's fine. That's not a problem. Well, like I say, thanks for having me on the show and that wonderful introduction.
Thank you so much for being here.
It was effusive. I'll give you that. It was effusive, Ed. It was effusive.
But it's what I said to you on the phone yesterday, Ed. I mean, like, it's nothing. Yeah. It's exactly what I said to you on the phone yesterday when we spoke. You know, like as soon as we started conversing, you know, as soon as you were brought into, like, as soon as what you were doing was brought into my world, like I saw what you were doing. It gets me very excited. Why? Because I know that it doesn't exist out there. And for the fact that you kind of grabbed this bull by the horns, you know, over the last 2-3 years, and you've built this system is actually incredible. And as I said to you on the phone, it's so important that someone shines some light on this and that patients who don't know you exist find out that you exist. Because at the end of the day, so many people out there are using cannabis medications that are not working perfectly for them. And, you know, they're having like you're going to tell us, they're having similar experiences to what you first had, where you got a product and it was wrong. And it's so important that this information actually gets out there and people start having a bit of clarity as to what products should work for them. And you really are, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of building this system. I understand it needs more patient population and it needs a little bit more engagement. But the system is there to at least start. At least they've got somewhere to go and start sharing their ideas and, you know, populating that site with data, enabling other patients to not get lost. You know, I always say this to everyone, not everyone's got an Ollie Mammon in their corner who understands the cannabis, who will be telling them that this is what you need, that's what you need. Actually, you know, with your personality and your general character traits, you should be staying away from the indicas, going towards the sativas or vice versa, increasing CBD in order to reduce the balance of the THC. You know, like that most people don't know. They just assume that their doctor is going to prescribe them right. And I just like Ed, sorry, go on.
Before we go any further, Ed, if people want to get hold of you, because I want to put it up on the screen, because this is everyone's going right. Okay, how do we get hold of this guy? What's the best? Is there not an email, but obviously, is there a website? What's the best one?
Sure, the website is the cannabispages.co.uk.
So it's www.thecannabispages.co.uk. I got it. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Not a problem.
So let's start. Edward, tell us about your journey. Tell us about, you know, what you were diagnosed with, you know, like your first interactions with cannabis, like where this journey all started for you.
Sure. So I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression in my early 20s. Just because basically as a teenager and growing up, I struggled to fit in socially, really. Didn't have many friends, didn't really go out. So it was literally just come home and just stay in my room, and that was it. So like, that's why I use cannabis really as a way of like relieving any stress, anxiety symptoms and and stuff like that. So that's why I use cannabis basically.
And you are a medical cannabis patient, right? You have a legal prescription in the UK.
Yeah. So I've held a prescription now for approximately 2 years.
Amazing. Amazing. Now, what was your first interaction with cannabis?
Probably 15 or 16, I would say. Yeah, that's when I first started using and experimenting with cannabis, and just to see, because basically friends were using it and said, "Oh, do you want to try it?" So I thought, I'll give it a go and see what it's like. And I generally found that it enabled me to relax and reduce my anxiety, like a lot, really. Just relax, basically, and like that. That's the main goal. And
see, social anxiety is something which people suffer from a lot today. But I mean, like, so you're like 35, 36 years old, right?
Yeah, 37.
Yeah. So 20 years ago, 22 years ago, social anxiety wasn't, it didn't really exist. Do you know what I mean? You were just seen as being nervous or awkward. And it's something which I suffered from a lot as a child as well, affiliated with my Tourette syndrome, always being like the special kid in class. I always felt like an outsider. And I remember the first time I smoked a joint, it was almost like it removed that divide between me and the person who used to, I'm not going to use the word bully me, but the person who used to give me a hard time. Do you know what I mean? Just that metaphorical person who was on my left, it removed that divide, because what it was, all right, I smoke cannabis, he smokes cannabis, here's a joint. Next thing you know, you're friends. And I realized that's what it did a lot for me as well when I was growing up, around the ages of 16, 17, 15, 16, 17. I feel like it gave me a little bit of a voice. It gave me a little bit of a life, it made social situations easier for me.
Couple of things, if I may.
Sure.
Because obviously we're on air 24/7. Social anxiety's always existed. Always. There's always been people who have been shy, who have been socially awkward, who don't feel they fit in for whatever reasons. That's been around since, we were hanging around in caves, worrying about saber-tooths. What we've got now, the whole situation, of course, is exacerbated by social media, and anybody can get anxious over that. The two are not exactly the same, but it's not a new phenomenon. And the other thing, Ollie, you could have taken up stamp collecting and made some pals that way.
Are you being serious?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I didn't know if you were being serious or not.
No,
I don't know if you know about something. There's something called email now, which basically renders stamps completely invalid. Just throwing it out.
No. When you were a kid at school,
No, I agree. Listen,
I
used to be part of all those clubs. I used to do sewing club and chess club and stuff.
Just to balance it out, all I'm just saying is that please don't think we are saying the only way you can make friends is to start smoking cannabis.
No, definitely not.
But I get what Ollie's saying. It gives you a point. It's like, music. Oh, you like this band? I like. Oh, great. Whatever. I totally get that. But we didn't want to. I don't want to endorse the notion.
I also found though, Russ, like from an early age, like being the special kid in class. That's what I was. Every class has one. That kid who's a little bit different. I was that special kid in class, having Tourette syndrome, having my twitches and whatnot. Yeah. And what I did find is, so what happens is you create these barriers in your mind as a child when you've got this social anxiety that people don't like you. All right. And half the reason why people don't like you is probably because you give out this image of you don't like me. The same way that if you meet someone today and they're upfront, like you feel like they don't like you, you're not going to like that person. It's just what happens.
It's like dog. In all seriousness, it's like dogs.
Yeah. But basically, as a child, you gave. I used to have that a lot, and I found that when I started smoking cannabis, it almost removed my paranoia of what people saw of me around me. It's like, as opposed to me thinking they don't like me, it was a little bit like I didn't care. I kind of like, it was that whole idea of everyone loves me, because I just stopped caring. I stopped caring about the negative, which therefore removed the social anxiety and created the positive. Why? Because I felt like the divide was being removed.
No, exactly.
What I'm going to say to both of you, and I don't say this to Ollie often because I normally just rip into him, as everybody knows. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel comfortable. You see, Ed, that's the point. Is that he'd be worried I was being too nice. Is that you've overcome huge things. In all seriousness, you've overcome enormous things, and that's to be applauded. And Ed, you as well. Here you are on a radio show. It's going out all over the world. You're being seen as well as heard. That's a testament to how far you've come.
No, it truly is. Yeah,
I hope I'm allowed to say that.
And also,
no, definitely not.
also on the other side, Ed, you've taken your struggle and you've put it into something to hopefully make sure that other people don't struggle, which is kind of the most beautiful thing. What usually happens is like those people who are trapped down, when they rise up, they forget that they were ever trapped down, and they kind of want to they want to forget the fact that they were ever underneath the boot, and then they kind of rise up, and the next thing you know, they put other people underneath their boot. Why? Because that's how they believe the world should be built. Someone always has to be down there, and someone has to be up there. What you've done is you've got yourself through this. And then using your brain, you've looked around, realized problems along your journey, and you've created a system to make sure other people don't have problems along the journey. If that's not amicable and generally heroic, you know what I mean? You've taken your journey of negativity and turned it into a potential journey of positivity for other people. And that's the main reason I wanted to bring you on the show, because it's quite a beautiful thing, and I know based on my life journey, like, half the reason I want to help others is because I know how much cannabis has helped me. I know loads of other people where cannabis has helped them, and they're still absolute pricks. They do not want to help anyone. That whole idea of paying it forward and sharing the love and the world's been good to them, they should be good back. They're like, no, I'm going to go out, I'm going to carry on taking. Even though the world's just giving them back their life, they're going to go out there and carry on taking. So it's really amicable and great that you're doing what you're doing.
We can't cure everybody. Speaking of helping people, by the way, Ollie Mammon, Rosemary Jessup would love to hear from you.
All right, fine.
Okay, she would love
I'll get on that. Sorry, Rose.
Yeah,
sorry.
She's a jolly good supporter, I must say.
So let me ask you a question. What made you go legal? So you had consumed cannabis before. You realized it was a benefit to you. What made you decide to go legal? What made you decide to go and get a legal cannabis prescription, especially 2 years ago, when so many people today still are not doing it, me included?
I think access really is the number one, really, and then peace of mind to say that, like, I'm not going to get prosecuted or anything like that for having this product with me, for this medicine. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what it is at the end of the day. It's not a legal drug. It's just a flower. It's a medicine. So that was my main goal for going legal, really.
Is that one thing you would recommend to other people, especially, like, I could assume, like, other anxiety sufferers, like, generally, I don't smoke and drive because I generally shit myself because of that whole fear of what would happen. I'm fully capable of driving a car when I'm stoned. I just don't ever want to get in trouble, and I don't ever want to get in trouble. I don't want to lose my license. I don't want to be deemed a criminal, and I also don't want to put other people's lives at risk. So I generally don't drive and smoke and whatever. But even when even when I haven't smoked, that whole idea, if I get pulled over tomorrow, I'm still going to have cannabis in my system. And that medical defense is something which really does appeal to me. That whole idea of, yes, I'm a responsible individual, so I can consume my cannabis in a responsible manner. But if I do have trace elements in my system tomorrow, I'm not going to get in trouble for that. That is something.
That's it. Exactly that. It's a safety blanket, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You want to feel secure, and in the knowledge and safety really is the number one goal as well, with the quality of medicine. Because if you're blind on the street, you don't know what's in it. To be fair to you, you don't know who's growing or where it's come from or what it's contaminated with. So that's another reason for going legal, really.
No,
so you can actually trace the product.
And what do you think about the legal system?
It has its ups and downs for sure. There's definitely a few hurdles to overcome, but I can see the improvement in it for sure. It's definitely improving. Because
you've been involved now for 2 years, like, bear in mind that legal cannabis, like legal medicinal cannabis, was brought in about November 2018. It was actually brought in about November 2019. And then in March 2020, we had this little virus called COVID-19, which has kind of disrupted everything. So it's actually been a bit of a, like, the start of our medical cannabis system in the UK has been heavily disrupted. Like, how have you, like, being a patient for the last 2 years, talk us through your journey. So let's talk about, your first medical cannabis prescription.
So the first prescription was back, like you say, 2 years ago now. It was when the prices were extremely high for appointments and cost of medicines, and even the way you receive the medications was different to the way it is now.
Are you allowed to say who the clinic was, who the first clinic you went through? Or if you don't want to say, you don't have to say. I don't know. Are we allowed to say that, Russ? Are we allowed to talk about that?
Sorry, I guess so. I think.
Okay, yeah. So what was the first clinic you used?
So it was the medical cannabis clinics.
Are you still with them now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've
fine.
been them 2 years
Okay.
now.
And
Not had a problem with like the doctors or anything like that. So.
amazing. So tell us about your first medical cannabis prescription. You said it was very expensive.
Yeah, so like at the time, the consultations were like in £250 at that one
Wow.
clinic. Because of my condition, at another clinic, it would have been twice the price because of the condition I suffered with. Because you really need
Can you explain why, if you don't mind me asking?
Because this was just at the time when it initially started, so I can't remember who the other clinic was, but I think they wanted like £400 because they needed 2 appointments before they would sign off on your prescription, basically.
And was that Ed? Was that? Sorry for jumping in. Was that for due
Sure.
diligence? Was that for due diligence on their part?
I'd guess so, yeah, because anxiety and depression, do you know what I mean? It's kind of borderline, and they don't want to be going down like psychosis route and stuff like that, and like possibly disrupting any sort of additional or adding additional.
Ask?
Sure.
And we have a policy here. I know Ollie's sick of me saying this, but I will say it, that the whole policy on men's radio and women's radio is, if it's not the BBC, if you don't want to answer the question, please, you're under no pressure whatsoever.
No,
it's a conversation. We just want you to
I
feel
told him that.
I know you
Just
do.
making sure. I'm not forcing him to answer. I'm not standing behind him with a gun.
I don't know, but you've got.
Yeah.
We can only see the top half. How do I know you don't have electrodes?
Look, mate. Answer the question. Answer the question.
Now, the point I was
Imagine
going to. The point I can you imagine with you the little buttons. Right, Ed. So my question is this:
Sure.
You've suffered this for a very long time.
Yeah.
Did you try? And if you've already said this, I'm sorry, but I didn't catch it.
No.
Did you try? Did you try conventional routes and they didn't work? And B, did they ever? I'm sorry, I'm kind of nosy, but our whole basis is on mental health and well-being.
Yeah.
Did they ever say to you, well, the reason you're, I don't know if you tried therapy and stuff like that to try and work it through. It's none of my business, but I think people watching all over the world would want to, they're interested.
Yeah. So
process.
Yeah. So I started heavily on pharmaceuticals like amitriptyline, venlafaxine, all sorts of different brands and different milligrams and ratios and stuff, and that didn't really have much of an effect. Really, it didn't really change how I felt within. It didn't really change my outlook on life or improve the situation. Really, if anything, it kind of made things worse. Okay, I spent a lot of time. I still do spend a lot of time indoors, but back then it was just would get out of bed. They didn't want to move really, or speak to anyone, or care, or it was kind of a dark time, and that's with pharmaceutical medicine. You could just literally turn me into more or less like a zombie, if you want to use that kind of phrase. Just milling through life, didn't really care about anything. So
just numbing you, right?
Yeah. So it was just pretty
doesn't
numb.
numb the pain; it numbs everything.
Yeah. Just to do your whole body, your whole persona. The life's just gone from you. Okay. I've tried talking therapies, done stuff like that. At one stage, I was actually sectioned under the Mental Health Act because I was that bad. So things were desperate at one stage. So
that must be. And do you have again, people will be wondering, do you have people who were there for you? I don't know, family members or loved ones or stuff like that.
Well, I've got a partner of 16 years now, thankfully. So who it wasn't for them, it probably wouldn't still be here because I'm not that close to my family or spend a lot of time with them or engage with them. Which is just a shame. So I've missed out on a lot in life, really, with my family and stuff. So.
Yeah, of course, man. Yes, of course.
All right. It's rough.
It's very rough.
It is rough. Very rough. Right. Okay. Thank you. So that gives us some sort of perspective on how you arrived at this point in your life, which that makes sense. That makes sense.
Growing up, growing up with,
Yeah.
I'm going to say mental health issues, these overarching mental health issues, you were raised, I assume, like the rest of us, believing that cannabis would have been increased detriment to you and cannabis would have caused, further issues. And, did you, like when you first went for your medical cannabis prescription, weren't you like a little bit surprised as to how, especially some of the doctors, is one of the things which they seem to be clicking onto quite quickly is the fact that cannabis and mental health are not actually linked. And you must have found that quite nice, right? Going in there with mental health issues, knowing that cannabis helps you and not having to fight the fight that cannabis is bad for your mental health. Sorry to go a little bit off piste of what we were actually going to discuss, but I mean, that must have been quite pleasant, right?
Yeah, it definitely is eye-opening as well, really. It's like whenever you go to the doctor, like that's like their first questions, isn't it? Do you use any illegal drugs, isn't it? It's like one of the basic questions they ask you. So to be asked that and then have a positive response is definitely refreshing and eye-opening.
I always found it incredible, so for years, all I ever heard, cannabis is going to damage your mental health. Cannabis is going to damage your mental health. And then we had Dr. Rebecca Moore. She came on and she was just like, yeah, it's an absolute crock. And over the last for like 5, 6, 7 months, it's been constantly repeated over again. And I find it's quite valuable because, I've got a lot of doctors in my family and they always advise my parents against me consuming cannabis because of my Tourette syndrome and about how it's going to cause further damage. And, you don't know what you're doing to yourself. And I find it quite beautiful that form of demonization is almost kind of just being scrubbed out because you have so many people like us who have struggled more with the pharmaceutical options than we have with the cannabis options. And if anything,
for sure,
the drug that was labeled as being the destroyer of our potential lives has actually been the one which has saved us. And it's quite lovely. And I'm just saying, like it must be, especially from your perspective as a mental health sufferer, you've had a prescription for 2 years, which means you were probably one of the first prescription holders in the UK. You're probably one of the first 500 patients to have one. It's kind of wonderful that you got it for an ailment and that it actually helps you with an ailment that cannabis was seen to be so detrimental against in the past.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's enabled me to like come off all pharmaceutical medicines now and just use the flower completely alone and just rely on that. So
do you feel better?
Miles better.
Yeah.
That was exactly the question that I was going to ask.
And if you didn't feel better, you would be honest, right? And you would say, I don't feel better.
No, 100%. Yeah, it's been a noticeable change.
Ed, I'm very curious if I could just dive into this for a sec, because a lot of those, let's just call them antidepressants, give them a general umbrella heading, all right? They say that when you come off them, you've got problems. You've got to be very, very careful. You can't just stop them.
That was advised, by my GP.
You got to wean yourself off them bit by bit.
Yeah, which I did.
Right, because otherwise, by the way, just as a warning to everyone, the side effects of just stopping are not pleasant.
I'm not going to lie or sugarcoat it. It was definitely a difficult journey to switch over the two. I'm not going to lie about it. Yeah, it was difficult.
How long did that take? What are we talking
6 months.
Okay, so that's that's in the great scheme of things, good, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to position it to everybody that
it wasn't an overnight thing. I didn't just go, I'm taking that and now I'm taking this.
No, you can't do it in a couple of weeks.
It is a process. It's important for anyone out there who's transitioning away from pharmaceutical remedial
100%
treatments to cannabis remedial treatments. It's very important that you do it carefully, you do it cautiously. No one's saying it can't happen. Of course it can happen, but make sure you do it under the right guidance and make sure that you're getting the right advice. Look at the cannabis pages, look at the information about the strains, speak to doctors, do as much research as possible, stay clear of things which are, like me with my anxiety, I always find the strains which are labeled as sativa are a lot more detrimental to my emotional state than the strains which are labeled indica. You guys might find it different. I'm saying that's for me personally, but it's important for you guys to also find that healthy middle ground on your transition out to make sure you don't cause yourself any harm. Yes, cannabis is a fantastic thing, but it's not a panacea. Do you know what I mean? It's not like a cure-all. Exactly. And based on that, like I want to discuss, or I want to get back onto the subject of your first course of medication, because one thing you said to me, your first course of medication didn't work. That's what you said to me yesterday, right?
Yeah, no, definitely not.
And do you know why that was? As in, like, how long was it until you found a supply which actually did work? As in, navigating a system where there was very little information, navigating a system where your doctors couldn't advise you, and where the directions of specific strains were not brought to your attention, and you weren't educated on what these specific products were actually designed for. How did you find navigating that 2 years ago at the start of our journey, when pages like the Cannabis pages didn't exist, companies like the CIC didn't exist, MedCan support didn't exist, and all of the nurturing educational groups in our marketplace, which patients now have to turn to when they weren't available? How did you find navigating that system?
It was a very difficult journey, I'm not going to lie. Even to find different medicines or different available brands is a struggle, you know.
It's ridiculous.
It's a lot of research.
Nothing's got a name. Everything's written in code. You're not smoking a super lemon haze. You're smoking KS4163-X97, and like for a dyslexic boy, I mean, I'm not even going to remember that. I'm going to get the letters and the numbers mixed up. I'm going to get confusion all the time.
Could you explain that to me? Because I'm lost. So if I, just from my point of view, if I went in and got Panadol, and I found Panadol for my headache, I'm making this as simple as I can for myself, really, and I found that Nurofen was better than Panadol or Anadol, whatever. I get that because I can remember the brand. I'm not going to remember the pharmaceutical composition of it. It would be ridiculous. No. So are you saying these things don't have any, like a normal, I say normal name, and it's all
no. They do have a generic name, Okay. So they normally use like the manufacturer's brand name, followed by an identifying number for the ratio of cannabinoids in the medicine.
Okay.
However, Russ, based on what the street genome would be familiar. I can't say that word. Familiar, but the plural of it, okay, which would be known, okay, to the general public. So let's say
familiarities,
the familiarity, exactly, the familiarity of what the street name would be known as, or the genetic would be known as within the cannabis community outside of medicinal, does not attribute to the names within. So therefore, when the patients will come in with a, let's call it Pfizer 347. Okay, let's just call it hypothetically Pfizer 347. But that Pfizer 347 will be based on a cannabis strain which does have similarities to street cannabis in terms of terpene profile, smell, taste, effects. But you will never be able to know what it actually is similar to. So therefore, a patient going into the system from the street who has an understanding of street cannabis won't be able to understand pharmaceutical cannabis, because the terminology used to describe the strains, the branding around it, the name of it, you know, imagine apples are not called apples. Apples are called Mary Farm 137. And then you're like, all right, you're looking at a sheet of paper, Mary Farm 137 through to 139. They're different grades of apples, different colors. And you're like, I know I like red Gala. I know I like a red Gala apple, but I don't know what Marytown. I don't know which one Marytown. I know they do a red Gala apple, but I don't know which one is the red Gala. One of them's going to be a sour apple. One of them's going to be a pink lady. One of them's going to be something else. And it's very hard to attribute that. So that's why companies like the Cannabis pages are so important, because even me going into the system, they're going to offer me a whole bunch of strains, and I'm not going to know what anything is. Even if it has got a THC level and a CBD level, there's so much more to a plant than just the THC level and the CBD level.
Sure.
Is that why you went out and started the Cannabis pages? Because you had a certain understanding of street cannabis, and you didn't realize, and you couldn't put A and B together, and you're like, this, if I'm struggling, everyone else must also be struggling. It's actually insane.
Sure.
Like,
so the strain names or cultivar names, however you want to label them, they're not really made available everywhere. Do you know what I mean? The information is not freely made up or offered up even or some will just still use like unique identifying codes. Some products. So finding the information is difficult, but normally you can literally just contact manufacturers and they'll give you like a rough guidance of what the genetics is supposed to be of the flower. Do you know what I mean? So we can get some analysis data from there and terpene profiles and start putting together this picture of what this product actually is for patients.
Now, when you first went and you had your first prescription and you got that first batch of flour which didn't work for you, like, did you just guess and say, I think that one would work? Or did you do a little bit of this research where you looked at, like, where you reached out to the farm to find out what the cultivar was? You made an informed decision and it was still wrong.
Yeah.
Or
so I did a fair bit of research whilst initially waiting for the prescription to arrive, because my first prescription, like I mentioned earlier in the show, was still having to be imported on a lane basis by patients as opposed to like a bulk import that we see now. So there was like a period of like 2 months waiting from initial consultation to receiving first batch of medications.
Wow, 2 months to wait for your medicine. Mental. So you're waiting for your meds and you're doing this research.
Sure, yeah. So just initially researching different products availabilities, because obviously by that time I'd had a flower prescribed, then a product prescribed. So I went into Google and just had a little research about them and the manufacturer and see what details they offered up and were able to supply to patients.
And the way that they described the product, was that accurate or not?
No, not really, because they still didn't provide any like generalized street names that you'd associate with a plant, or like you could easily go and look up and find it's like what their effects and properties they claim that would generally come from that kind of flower. Do you know what I mean?
And you couldn't have that. So
no, they didn't really. They had one flower strain that they gave you like a brief genetics of it. But other than that, it was just literally like names that they've generated for their own products.
And so nowadays, companies work. Sorry, go on, Ed.
Sure,
Ed. So because I'm just mindful of time, so I want to really maximize the time we have with you. If folks go on to thecannabispages.co.uk, what will they find? What's on there? How does it look? How does it work?
Yes, ultimately, it's at the moment it's set up as a directory for patients to navigate through. So we provide listings of clinics, pharmacies, and ultimately medicines as well, and what cannabinoid ratios they contain, terpene profiles, where they're cultivated, who the manufacturer is.
Advisor for cannabis. Is that
Pardon?
Are you a bit of a trip advisor?
He's Trustpilot. He's Trustpilot for cannabis.
Trustpilot for cannabis.
He's Trustpilot for cannabis. It's so smart, because also, how are you supposed to know? You know, like the same way we have a beautiful hotel. All right, how do you know it's a beautiful hotel unless you check the reviews? And that's it. You know, like we need a system where patients can review their products, where patients can share their information with other patients, because these companies are being run by they're corporations. They don't. I'm not saying they don't care. Of course, they care.
There will be a minority of companies that are trying to get into the market, that are like the smaller family markets.
Here's the fact.
Competing.
Right? Everything that you buy. And most people buy online. You're going to do this online, right? Mostly. If it's a book, right? If it's a product, the smart thing to do is you look at the reviews. You don't listen to what we used to call in the legal world mere puffery that's coming out from the manufacturer. It's called mere puffery that's coming out from the manufacturer. They're not going to say, "Well, this is a load of old tut." They're going to say, "This is the greatest."
It's a shit book. You don't want to read this. The ending is terrible.
And or this kitchen knife will go blunt in 30 seconds. Don't try it. But we're going to try and sell it to you, obviously. So you read the reviews. And those people ultimately are unbiased. They're just members of they're punters like me and Ollie, and they'll either like it or they won't. And those reviews are excellent.
And so except for Facebook forums, I do believe this is one of the only sites out there which does this. So you will be able to go out there and you'll be able to communicate with other patients and get ideas from them. but an actual, you could call it like a center point for the industry
Yeah.
to turn to. There's nothing else out there.
It's a fantastic idea, and it's
so
logical,
smart.
and it's what we're used to, and it's very helpful. So bravo.
Well, that's
to
the
you.
thing, yeah. Well, I appreciate
Bravo to
that. Thank you for your
No,
kind comments
Not
tonight.
being kind, I'm being honest. Sometimes, though, Ed, don't you find
Yeah.
that the most blindingly obvious idea, and you always think, well, it's like Paul McCartney when he wrote Yesterday, you think, well, someone must have done that. It's so good. It's someone's
Sure.
done that.
Yeah.
And then you look around and think, actually, do you know what? No one's
How
done
has
that.
no one done it?
How's
Yeah.
no one done that? So it's a crackingly good idea.
Do you wish you had a site like the Cannabis pages to refer to when you started on your journey? Would it have made your life easier?
Yeah, 100%.
I know you started the site, so you're not going to say no, it's shit. but generally, like, because I'm also thinking, like, as soon as I start my journey, like, the only way I'm going to actually understand what any of these strains are is based on my education, which I already have, and the information on your site. The biggest problem, which is what we discussed yesterday, is the fact that you need more patients to disseminate their information. You need more patients to share their experiences, don't you?
Yeah. If you want to like see how an effective a product is for a certain condition or ailment, then ultimately we will need that patient feedback at the end of the day. Yeah. So
because right now it's like a library, isn't it? And basically, what needs to be, it needs to be a community. And at the moment, it's a library of information. It's almost like the citadel. It's there, and it's got all the information which you might need. But at the end of the day, cannabis is very personal. Individual experiences in this industry are very personal. And, you know, me and you both as anxiety sufferers might need different medicines. You know, I actually spoke to someone recently, and they are an anxiety sufferer. They actually medicate illegally. And they said the only thing they can smoke is Tangy. Now, if I smoke Tangy, I die. I literally die. Tangy
You've lost me. I have no idea.
Fine. So Tangy is a strain of cannabis which tastes just like tangerine. Okay? It tastes just like oranges. It's the most uplifting, energetic, vibrant, flavorful, yummy strain you could ever smoke. And if I smoke it, I break into a sweat and feel like I'm about to have a heart attack. But everyone else who smokes it, it's like they're heaven. Now, I've got several people I know who suffer from anxiety who find it absolutely fine to smoke, and that's what they go for. That's what they will search for. They'll search for strains like that. I'm the opposite, and that's why it's so important to kind of have this site, because even if something works for 50 people, there's still 3 or 4 people, 5 people.
I'm not going to give you the medical example, Ed, but you know, I like single malt whiskies, and Ollie and I've had this conversation before because I don't touch cannabis. I'm just here for everybody's watching, trying to get educated and looking at it with a completely unbiased.
Russ just lied to you. Russ uses drops to go to sleep, but they're CBD drops.
Oh yeah, I do that. But what I mean is I don't smoke.
And he uses a terpene-infused head roller to remove his headaches. And he also vapes vape pens, which are CBD vape pens. So he does consume cannabis. He just doesn't like.
So you're still topping up your cannabinoid system. So
exactly. It's the separation.
Look at me. I'm Keith Richards.
You're cool, mate. You're finally cool. Everyone likes you now, Russ. Cool. Everyone loves you.
Yeah, right. What I'm saying to you is I'm not a social smoker. Never have been. But the interesting thing, the way that I get my head around these differences, because when I came into this, I thought it was like one plant, you get one thing, and Ollie is educated for 66 weeks. So I like single malts, but there's such a difference. It's like saying, I suppose, all whiskey is exactly the same. And I got a message from one of my kids, "Oh, Dad, yesterday I tried this. It was far too peaty. It was like eating a garden." And I went, yeah. And I totally get that. Other people would love that. Other people, now, obviously, that's not a medical side to it, but I can see how it would affect you. I understand that. And it took me a long time to get my head around that. I couldn't follow it at all initially. You know, I just thought, well, Nurofen's Nurofen. There you go. And that's it.
Yeah, there's a lot to the cannabis part, really, right? Yeah. So
yes,
a lot.
Of course. Oh, yes, gosh, yes.
Based on inherent personal characteristics of cannabis, do you think there's a lot of misprescribing and misadvising from what people should be using and consuming to what they're actually being prescribed?
Yeah, there is a possibility that'll be happening. Yeah, I think it's just lack of information available to the doctors at the time of prescribing. I think the main focus at the moment is like a standardization of THC and CBD, the main two cannabinoids that they want to be focusing on. So that's where they're going like a low dose really, and operating on dosage amount of THC rather than any terpene factors into prescribing really.
They're trying to simplify something which doesn't actually want to be simplified, or they're ignoring certain aspects of a plant. You know, they're ignoring certain directional aspects of a plant which could come into play, and they're assuming they won't. This is one thing which we've seen a lot in the CBD market. Is people don't understand that, you know, other ingredients when paired with product can actually cause an effect, and it's quite important to think about the direction of all products. You know, the direction of all
100%.
You know, there's this desire to provide people with things that you think is right for them, but actually in this marketplace of cannabis, it's not about what we think is right for them, it's what is actually right for the end consumer. And like you said about the dissemination of information, and, you know, like the wrong information kind of getting out there, it's because there's a lot of opinions in a situation when there are just personal facts. Do you understand what I mean? So opinions will come from people like me to people like you, but in reality, your personal fact is all that matters. And I really want to repeat this one more time. I believe that a system like the Cannabis pages enables patients to share that information, because it's not patients speaking to doctors, all right, is one thing, but it's a one-way traffic. Patients need to almost educate themselves, and together they become a community.
Unfortunately,
which can then educate higher up. You know, there are too many people trying, and there aren't that many people thinking about who they should be trying for. Do you understand what I mean? And it is so specific.
No, I don't get that. I'm so sorry. I know Ed does. Forgive me. I'm sorry if I'm being slow.
So you have a lot of cannabis companies out there in the world globally which are opening, and their aim is to produce a medical cannabis product.
Yep.
But what happens is, if you don't think about who your medical cannabis product is for before you've designed it, then theoretically you're creating a pointless product as opposed to a purposeful product.
You're not focusing on the end user, right?
And the fact of the matter is, if they're not going to think about the end user, then the end users have to think about themselves. They need to come together and empower themselves as a consumer group, because that's what they are. They're a consumer group.
You are now. No, you are now, and they're
a consumer group who are being missold product, not through any malice, just through misinformation.
Well, regulations down at the end of the day as well. So advertising and marketing products like these is non-existent in the UK. So, which is just one of them hurdles, isn't it?
As we head up towards the end of the show, I don't know where the hell the hour's gone.
It's gone so quickly.
It's gone zoom by. I'm glad you think that. Good, because I would hate. It would be so embarrassing if the guest just said,
"Dude, that was the longest hour ever." I commented on still here.
That's an hour of my life I'm never going to get back.
I didn't actually realise it was close to 7 o'clock as it was. To be fair,
it's gone.
So Ed, you've started the Cannabis pages. Where do you see it going in the next sort of 12, 24 months?
Hopefully, just building building on the data that we've already got. How we provide information to patients, and ultimately interaction with patients. I want them to be able to leave their voices and opinions on these products openly, even pharmacies and clinics if they want to, or just want the voices of patients, really. That's the main goal.
It's about kind of creating a dialogue between the patients and the people at the top in the supply chain. And almost like it's about creating it's almost like back onto your two cups and a piece of string. They're not connected. The suppliers are not speaking to the patients. They're speaking to suppliers, speak to suppliers, who speak to suppliers, who speak to patients. And then the patients,
there is a lot of separation.
Who go up.
There's not enough transparency, unfortunately.
And sites like the Cannabis pages really do enable patients to kind of unify. They enable patients to communicate. And the fact of the matter is that as patients, if we're not going to communicate, if we're not going to educate ourselves, if we're not going to smash this demonization of cannabis, and if we're not going to help each other, no one's going to help us.
Isn't it fascinating? Isn't it fascinating? You're absolutely right, Ollie, by the way. Isn't it fascinating how something that was sort of not that long ago in terms of human history, right? 20th, 21st century was just some sort of hippy dippy thing, and you know, people sitting in a field putting daisies together and getting a bit high, is now this multi-billion-dollar huge area of industry, as I always
Yeah.
say, with everything in life, follow the money. You never go wrong. That's where it's all at. Ed Mcdonald, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you for what you're doing for the community. Thank you for
Thank you for
coming
having me
on.
on,
Thank you
Shane.
so much for being with Ollie and working with Ollie and everything else. Really appreciate it. That's it, gang.
Quick
We're
hour.
right out of time. I can't believe it. I don't know what
Sure.
the heck the time. So it'll be 6 o'clock next Thursday. More extraordinary guests, nothing to do with me, all down to Ollie Mammon.
Or Ollie Mammon.
Ollie, stay safe. Ed, all the very best to you. And until
Thanks
we
very
meet
much.
again, try and stay out of trouble, will you, please?
Don't get arrested or do.